What's up? Yo, what's up? Um, it is April 9, 12:52. I'm really tired. Technically, I sleep at like 10, so it's not really like super past my, sleep time, but it's definitely, I don't know. I got in a car accident, kind of. It's a car accident for sure, but, I went to go drop off some packages and this lady backed up into my car. Brand new car, by the way. And, scratched the back of it and shit. And it's not super bad, but you know, it's not really fun to go through a car accident. So yeah, I don't know. I traded as well today, and it didn't really go well as neither. Price was really choppy, honestly. I was kind of beating myself up a little bit earlier, but nah, I took a look at it and it's looks pretty bad. But then like later it fucking rallied to the moon, like actually. Uh, and I thought it was bearish, and I asked Grok, and Grok was like, "Yeah, it's bearish." It was not bearish. It was like crazy bullish momentum, like straight up broke all of the previous structure. Like all of that price action that happened, you literally could have had that as all of your risk, and you still would have had profit. That's how big of a move it was, which is crazy. So I don't know. It is what it is. I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know. Really makes you think. Just like, is there? I don't want to say is it gonna work out, but like, just I mean, picturing myself, I guess 5 years ago, I wouldn't really think about being in this kind of position, and then trying to imagine 5 years from now, I feel like you can't really like, I guess, tell what's gonna happen. But on the same side, it's also like, I'm doing all these things in order to direct my life to be better. So either it plays out in the way that I want or it just fucking straight up fails, you know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what happened, man. I feel like I have this little dilemma right now where it's just like, why am I the way that I am now? Like, I feel like I'm so different and not even like person wise. Like, just like I'm not even an entity no more. Like it's kind of like limbo-ish. And I know I said that in the first video, but like it really does feel like that. And like I mean, this is what I think. Like back then, I don't think I was like I didn't like my memory was a lot better. I didn't have as much like brain fog. I feel like everything was a lot clearer. and I didn't stutter as much, and I could actually think and process stuff. And now I feel like, in a way, I've almost become a little bit more retarded and like just gone. And like, I think also as well, like most of the time, I'm just constantly in my head. I wouldn't even say most of the time, like all the time. I'm just in my head because I don't really talk to anybody. Like, I don't have nothing to talk about with people. Like, there's nothing really that will be like, oh, okay, that like will satisfy me or interest in me or anything like that. Like, it just doesn't really matter to me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just not a big deal. And I wonder if that's because of like emotional detachment or like the numbness or whatever. But then another part of me is also like, like I think yesterday or a couple of days ago, I felt very scared, and I was like, oh, this is why I don't like feeling. But I wonder if it's because, on one hand, how scary it is exactly why I kind of became like this. And another part is also thinking is probably because, like, well, I think this is like the most likely answer, but like with all the trauma and shit that I went through, and I've never really considered it as trauma, just kind of like shit that just happened. But I'm starting to think that, like, maybe it just was slowly building up, and then now it's finally fucking clicked, and now everything is like different. Because I feel like when I think about me in the past, like it just is not really, it doesn't exist, you know? Like I can't even say like, oh, it's a different entity. Like it just doesn't exist at all for me. So I just don't know why this, like, I just don't know why it got to this point. Like what exactly happened to get to this actual point. I don't know. I feel like also it's just, I mean, this might just be because I watched Tokyo Ghoul recently, which I've never watched before, surprisingly. But it might also just because, I feel like whenever I watch anime or any shows, I get really immersed in it, and then my reality kind of becomes surrounded around that. But I feel like like that whole scene of Kaneki getting tortured and stuff like that, like, and then he becomes, a completely different person. And then in season two, he doesn't even remember what happened to him. And I feel like, I don't want to say like, you know, oh, that's what happened to me. But I generally just don't remember most of the shit like I can remember bits and pieces, and sometimes like I'll get very in detail and remember, very specific emotions and stuff like that, smells, scents. So it's like borderline opposite spectrums. It's like sometimes I won't be able to recall anything, and then other times I'll be able to recall the very emotion and smell and like the way it all played out down to the last detail or whatever. And it's like, why is that? Because most of the time I just don't remember, or it's just not even a thought. So I don't know. It's very weird. But like the point being that he became a different person completely, and although he was cool and stuff like that, there was a lot of times that he kind of, like, you could see him like Heisei, and then uh times where Kaneki would basically come out and try to be like, bring me back, shit like that. I don't really have that, but I feel like I definitely have the sad part where it's like there's just so many times, or just here and there in a day, where it'll be like, there's just this like emptiness or sadness, and it just constantly keeps coming back over and over again. But then as soon as it comes, it also goes away. So it's very short lived. But even still, it's like, why? You know, what's the reason? And usually it would be like, oh, I was depressed, or I had this happen to me, or whatever. But it's not even like I didn't even feel like that, Like it just feels like it just happens and then it's gone. It's so temporary, you know? And then there's another thought I was having as well that was like maybe it's because this is technically what peace is, and I just don't see it like that. Um, if this is what peace is, then that's crazy, and if it's not, awesome. I think there's an objective truth to reality, and the only way you'd be able to see it is if you were God or omnipresent being. So we never really truly know exactly what happens for sure. But I really would like to know the actual, objective truth of why this happened or why I am the way that I am. And this kind of ties in with more spiritual stuff, but I've been seeing like 1111 and like a lot of angel numbers pop up a lot, and I don't really know what to make of it. And back then, I used to be very spiritual when I was a lot younger. Uh, and I don't know, I just don't really feel a certain emotion or any correlation to it. You know what I mean? I think trauma is very interesting. Like it straight up shapes so much of a person, and it completely changes their reality. Because depending on how you handle that situation, it bases everything else after that, essentially. And I was thinking about, Vietnam people who survived the war in Vietnam and were able to come back to America, and they just got absolutely fucking berated by, the own people that they were fighting for. Like they came in thinking they're gonna fight for the country. Mind you, they probably weren't even. I think most of them were like straight up drafted. Like they didn't even have a choice. So they literally got thrown into a war that first of all they didn't ask for. Second of all, come back and you have all these people who are like, dude, you're a fucking baby killer and shit like that, and you're getting all these names at you and just hated and shit like that. And it's like, damn, dude. And I was watching this one kind of interview, and the guy was just like, he's like a vet and stuff, and he survived it, but he was like crying because he was like, yeah, all my friends are literally dead. They passed away. I'm the only remaining from the group. You know what I mean? Uh, and he was talking about his experience where he came back, to America, and he instead of receiving praise for what he did, he ended up getting hated, and he killed a guy during the war, and he said, it was brutal, and that wasn't right. And then you see all the stuff that's happening with society and stuff like that, and he's just like, it's horrible, and I'm like, damn, dude. And you kind of wonder why they drink so much and why they are essentially so like I don't know. You see the typical old person that's kind of like, oh, uh, like they just act very rough, I guess, and kind of hardish. And this kind of is where it ties in with trauma, where it's like you're put in a position where you can't handle the amount of suffering that you're going through. So in order to get out of that, your mind or consciousness basically it adapts or copes in a certain way. And I think in those cases for Vietnam's soldiers or veterans, they kind of adapt, and this is not all of them, of course, but like they adapt to a certain toughness or a tough character. And I mean, can you blame them? You know, I don't know. But I think they're probably one of the most, in at least our current society, that one of the most people that suffer. Because I feel like a lot of people suffer, but if we were to make like a scale, or if we were to make a competition, I think they would win by far. Yeah. Which obviously I don't recommend doing, but don't compare your pain. But at the same time too, though, man, you see some of these people and you're like, dude, that's crazy. Like, if you went through this shit that I went through, you would have killed yourself. Like, actually, because like some people just haven't suffered, and I think a lot of people should suffer. And I don't think, I think there's two different types of suffering. Obviously, there's necessary, and then there's unnecessary. But I think a lot of people just don't suffer in general, and especially with how social media and a lot of this technology stuff is going on. A lot of it is very oriented about what you want to perceive, etc. And there's a lack of disagreement on what you're actually looking at, because you are basically orientating everything that you desire and constantly reaffirming it. So, for example, if I'm on TikTok and I'm looking at videos about how I hate turtles, my feed is going to be only about how I hate turtles and how turtles are bad and etc. It's going to basically be a feedback loop where you're just talking about how evil turtles are, but you never actually take a look at the opposite side and say, okay, well, turtles are actually good for this, this, and that. So it's very bad because you end up with all these people who become essentially just like, I would even say slaves, but like slaves to their own ideology and completely disregard the semi-objective truth, because I think to say that there's an objective truth would be impossible for a human to perceive. So the closest we can get is semi-objective, of course. So, which obviously that can be seen through a lack of bias and looking at what we call factual information. Yeah. I don't know. Rambling. I'm super tired. I need to sleep. Yeah. Guys, look, it's almost 1-1-1. Oh, there you go. See what I mean? Angel numbers, bro. What's going on? Yeah, I don't know. So much pain. So much pain. I sometimes think about, is it even worth it? Or like, what is it all for? You know what I mean? Because, like, don't get me wrong, I'm doing all this stuff to become better and become the best version of myself. But sometimes I just think, like, why? Like, I become the best version of myself. I get money, I get all this stuff, and then what? You know, then what do I do? Like, I don't know. My time here is very limited, you know. I don't know. All right, well, bye guys.